Hey everyone, well we are back with a spring project, and after last week's 5 ways to get inspired by spring, I wanted to jump in and start painting some of the flowers that I've been seeing a lot of, and that is poppies. So I have one of my just favorite floral books, Cut Flower Garden, and this has a wonderful section on poppies, and I just want to remind you that if you don't have any poppies growing in your area, to grab a book that has some pictures or a magazine. I know I have lots of poppies springing up all over the place right now, and so I have pictures on my phone and I've been having fun sketching them. Also want to remind you too that we had last week created that palette of the colors that I'm using this spring. So I'm going to be really sticking with these colors today, and we're going to be using mostly a permanent green, and then we're going to play with the yellow, both the cadmium yellow light and medium, and a bit of orange too, and we'll be using for a little bit of purple to create a little bit of shadowing. So this is going to be a really fun sketch. I'm going to go ahead and let me grab my paint palette and my micron pen, because we are going to start out really by doing some sketching, and I'm going to just go ahead and sketch with the micron pen this morning. And I have, again, I was just looking at some really beautiful poppies. I just love how free-spirited they are. This micron pen is not working terribly great, but that's actually okay, because we're really just wanting to do a nice light sketch. And again, if you have a picture of a poppies in front of you, or maybe you even have some poppies, that can be really fun. And I always like to think those poppies, their petals are usually stretched out nice. They have a little bit, depending on the variety, of an edge to them. They have a really thin stalk. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring this guy up here. I'm going to do another one that's going to be a bigger one up here. We're also going to just have some greenery, right? Because that's always just really lovely. I also wanted to create some poppies that were not quite blooming yet. So over here even, I'm going to have one that's just partially open. I was noticing too that some of them, some of the green part, that stem that protects them, wraps around them such like so. And then even with some of them, you'll have these thin ones that are not quite opened yet. Again, depending on the variety of the poppy. So we'll have some back here too that they're reaching their sweet faces up to the sky, just waiting for their moment when they will be unfurled. And there's something so light and vibrant about poppies. Okay, I'm going to even come down here now and just do a couple of little buds that I see, maybe that we're just almost seeing like a side view, a portrait of them. And the green will really be surrounding them a lot because they're not quite open yet. And have another one coming out right over here. Again, not quite open. And then over here, I am going to do another poppy that's really nice and wide. And so you can see I am just moving around, kind of looking at where my space is. And again, that beautiful, they almost have a clamshell like exterior, and then I'll sometimes come through and add another petal back here that I can see, another petal right over here. But really lovely flowers. Usually if they're totally opened up, there's maybe 5 petals. And I'm going to do another one here again, and almost kind of looking too that we have different variety of shapes. And then too, I want them kind of looking different ways. I always think that makes for a really intriguing flower. So I've got 1, 2, I've got 3 petals. I'll have another one coming out here, and then another one coming up. So that looks really nice. And then I'm just looking around. I'm on this one. I think I'm going to actually have this one coming down a bit. Okay, so you can see too, I've got a nice light sketch. Let me come in a little bit closer so you can see that. I was going to maybe do a splatter paper, but we thought we'll just go on the white today. As I look around here, the only thing maybe is I might just want one facing this way. So maybe I have a flower that's starting to open up, and I'm going to just put it right over here, just like so. Okay. So now that I have that, this is looking really nice. I'm going to add some more green down here, but I can also do that with the paint. And I'm gonna have just some more stalks coming up. Maybe over here, one more little flower starting to open up, right? Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and grab my paints. Again, maybe we'll have a little bit of a leaf. Sometimes, as you can see, I like to keep adding. As you can tell, and if you've painted with me before, you know that I tend to keep playing with things and looking around and just thinking too what I might use this for. Sometimes it's fun just to paint, right? And then other times you start to think what I might, if you have a gift that you want to give to someone, you know, make sure to create it on a piece of paper that's going to fit into a frame really easily. So again, I've got my colors over here. I'm going to start out with some yellow. I'm going to grab some yellow, and I've got some cadmium yellow light hue. And I am going to just start going and dancing this color into some of my larger petals. Now I was out hiking up in Auburn actually earlier. It was on Sunday. I had a beautiful hike on my sister's, one of her favorite trails. And I was noticing too that there was a lot more yellow poppies that were more yellow with a lighter orange tinge versus over on the American River Trail where I often will run. The poppies were a bit more orangey. So it's always interesting too to see the variety of color. And then in Erin's book, in Floret Farm's book, I was noticing in the Iceland poppies that she features, those poppies have some of them are more peachy, and they have a yellow center with a very vibrant orange exterior on their petals. So lots of variety here, lots of variety. So again, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to maybe make these a bit more yellow, just as an ode to the hike that I went on this weekend. It was really quite beautiful. There was all these butterflies flying. The butterflies were black, really, really beautifully black with orange and blue spots. They were just gorgeous. Okay, now if you wanted to make it darker and all, you wanted to just add that spot of color, make it a bright orange, I can take that orange and again just start moving it around in here. And we're going to add a bit of purple too to create some shadowing. And if you wanted to take some pink and mix it up with the yellow, that's going to give you a more vibrant color, right? And these, I'm just going to put a little bit of color here. We're going to put some color here. Again, I'm playing with that light yellow, but if I wanted even to grab some medium, you can see that's pretty bold too, and it's more opaque. So again, I'm just going to play with some of these. I'm about to grab the green next while we let that sit. I'm definitely going to add a little bit more color in here. And then let's add some green now. I'm going to grab my permanent green. And with that permanent green, I am going to go ahead and just start bringing that down and really pulling it down away from the sketch almost, using that tip of the brush to create some very, very nice thin lines, because I notice when I see these tulips, they're often in the wildflower grass, and everything is very delicate. It's moving in the breeze. Nothing is heavy. Nothing is really weighed down. The flowers, the petals are light. I'm going to move this guy. The petals are light. The leaves are light. The stems are light. The grass is light. It's just almost like it's just burst through the ground. The first to get up, you know, it's so interesting. The first flowers of spring, they're often the very light ones. Maybe it is just easier for them to come through the ground versus our more hardy varieties. I'm thinking too, as we get into tulips, heavier flower, right? Peonies, which are not out yet. Of course, we've got a couple months before those come. Definitely a much heavier flower. Even the iris has a much more elegant flower, but there's something beautiful about wildflowers. I love how poppies just grow wild. Okay. So pulling this down, and you might think to yourself, I want a little bit more variety with my green, because after all, we love that variety with the green, it really gives a lot of personality to our stems. And when we look at the grass, when we're looking at the flowers, let me back up just a little bit so you can see see the whole thing. We really love that variety. So what I'm going to do now is I have that dioxazine purple. I always have a hard time saying that. And I'm going to mix that with a bit of my green. And you don't need a lot of purple. And I'm going to come back here now, and where I would have shadowing, I am going to just bring in some of that color. And I might pull it in a little bit. And if you're noticing too, you want a bit more green, bring that in. There, you can see too, that's a darker color. The purple definitely adds a bit of a shadowy color, right? So I am just moving that around. Oh, and be careful where you put your hand. I just put my hand right in the paint of my stems. So I'm going to just come back over here. No problem. We can just take care of that very easily there. All right, we're going to pull that green around on these blossoms that were not quite blooming yet. I'm also going to come back and let's go ahead and add, I'm going to grab a different paintbrush. It's just a little bit bigger here. This is a size 8. I'm going to get some more orange. This time I am going to go for the orange and get that nice and wet over here. And let's go ahead here, and you can see that pop, right, with the orange, the cadmium orange. This is really lovely. I'm going to start adding it in here. Again, you'll notice too, I'm not covering everything up with color. We want it to dance, and leaving some white space really does help it to dance. Now we're going to do just a bit of splattering, just to add a little bit of spring bounce to this. We're just about finishing up here too. You can see this doesn't take too long, which is really just fun. Isn't it fun to come in? We're not even at 15 minutes yet quite. I love to come in and just quickly do a really lovely watercolor sketch. Now, if you wanted to, you could certainly go back. I'm going to add a bit of color here and add some more detail. We'll let this completely dry if you wanted to, and then come back and add some more micron pen. I'm going to add a little bit more green and just do a little bit more detail work up here. I'm even going to go ahead and do some leaves, just some grass back here. And I'll pull it all the way down, right, so we don't have grass just hanging out. Making sure too, all my tulips heads are attached to stems, because sometimes I forget. And we have a flower head that's just dancing in the breeze. All right, gonna thicken up some of my grass down here in the stems. Gonna create some shadows maybe right here where I have the flowers going in different directions. And there's just a little bit of shadowing where there would be covering up right from the other stems. Just wanting to really create that look of realism, right? That the flowers have that, we know it has just a sense of depth. Now I'm going to add a little bit of purple to yellow, just a little bit. And if I show you here, it's really right there in the corner. It's not much at all. But then what I can come down and do, and where I would see some shadowing, maybe at the base of the flower, I don't want my green getting in there. I'm going to take that purpley and that yellow, maybe even add a bit of orange to it. Because it's not, I don't want it to look purple, but it just creates a bit of a shadow. And right over here, again, once again, the shadows create the depth, right? So where we would normally see shadows on like the interior of the flower, right in there. Oh, you can see I got a little bit of green in there. Not a big deal. I'm going to take a dry brush and I'm just going to mop that up. You could also take a paper towel and just go ahead and dab it up, and then we'll come back in a minute after it dries and I can clean that up a bit. So never be too dismayed if the watercolor starts to bleed into each other a little bit. That happens when we're painting fast. So I'm just going to come back in, again, lay that in there, take actually a little bit of the darker color, come back in just nice and light, and move that around. And then over here too, I can move some of that color around, coming up, getting some of the edges with that shadow color, moving over here. And wherever you want to pop, you know, come back with that cadmium orange. That will definitely give it a pop. And just come back maybe where we think the color might be dancing. For example, over out here. And it looks really, really lovely. Now what I'm going to do last is I am going to take some of that orange. I'm going to get it super, super wet. And then I will just do some splattering up here. And that's just a fun way of bringing a little bit of a bounce of spring. Maybe mix it with a bit of yellow. Again, keep it really, really wet. And then come back, do a little bit of splattering. I just find that really tends to lighten things up with a bit of a spring feel. You could even do that with the green if you wanted to, and then we'll just let this dry. I may come back and add a bit more color right in here, but for the most part, we have got this done, and I think it is just lovely. Our beautiful spring poppies in under 17 minutes. What do you guys think? Okay, if you have any specific spring flowers that you would like to paint or like me to paint, please let me know in the comments. I will see you guys soon. Have a beautiful Wednesday.